Anyone got anything they want to ask or share? Or
Okay, I let. Am I on?
yeah.
Okay. Is that all right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I lately had a few encounters with a lion, and in one of them I was sucked up into the lion and looked out through his face, and I couldn't do anything else but roar. I would like to know a bit more about this roaring of the lion.
That's good. Yeah. Interestingly, I've actually just done an encounter with a group which involved exactly the same thing with a lion and engaging the lion. And the lion really is one of the four faces of God, and it's to do with rulership and authority and kingdom power. And so when we align ourselves with the four faces of God, we are aligning ourselves with his nature, who he is, and the aspects of his character that are released through those four faces. So the lion represents the kingly, then you have the ox, the prophetic, and the eagle, the apostolic, and then the man, the priestly. And so, when you encounter the lion like that, it's a revelation of who he is in terms of the speaking creatively, ruling in kingship. The lion roared creation into being, if you like. And so the roaring of the lion is where that it's such a deep resonating sound that it actually even shakes the ground. When a real lion physically roars, they roar into the ground. They don't roar up into the air, they roar into the ground. And roaring into the ground causes the ground to actually vibrate. And so when we begin to roar from the mouth of the lion, we are speaking out the words of God with authority and power. And when we see through the eyes of the lion, we begin to view things from the standpoint of kingship, authority, kingdom power. The lion of the tribe of Judah. Judah was the tribe of praise, and Judah ultimately became King David's tribe that he ruled from. So Judah ruled, and so there's a great sense there of authority in that. And so I showed some pictures. I'll show you some pictures of the lion roaring. Which I think it would be good for you just to see. There's a picture of Jesus with the scepter and the crown, with his mantle, and everything is like the eyes of the lion, the mouth of the lion, ruling over the earth and from the heavens. There's that real sense of kingship, authority, and power there, and that's very much one aspect of it. But actually, there are other aspects, and I think the lion wants to, when we engage him, we come into him, he wants to bring us into a whole different dimension of freedom in responsibility. Because sometimes responsibility can feel like, ooh, this is a weight, this is heavy, this is hard. But actually, there's another picture which I use, which just shows the freedom that coming to the lion brings as we embrace the fullness of the colors of who we are and our redemptive gifts and our callings, and it opens up a whole different horizon really for us to see from the place of the lion and to be free in our authority, because it should be joy. We need to rule from a place of joy because it's praise. The key about kingship and about the lion is it's about praise, and therefore we have to be praising in all circumstances. We have to be coming from that aspect of continual thanksgiving, continual praise, which releases us. And that's what released the angels to operate on behalf of, say, Paul and Silas when they were in the prison. Even though the situation looked, oh, this is not a good situation, their response to it was praise, to praise. And their praise released the angels and the earthquake, and it opened up the stocks, and it opened up the prison doors, and it released them. So there's a whole dimension of praise, thanksgiving, an attitude of gratitude in who we are and who we're called to be, and in our identity and in the authority that we've been given, which releases us to bring victory. And the whole thing about kings, they were there to rule, but they were also there to conquer. And when you think of King David, he ruled and expanded the kingdom. And I think there's something very much about what God wants us to do there, is to understand expanding the kingdom and ruling from that place of authority. So that's one aspect of it. But there's also another aspect of it that also is a place of total security. And so there's another picture there of rest and ruling from a position of rest. And you see all eternity and is beyond the lion there, and we come out of it from a place of rest, and we come into that place of peace and security of knowing that he's not anxious, frantic, he's at rest in everything he does, even though he's a lion, even though he's ruling, and he wants us to come into that intimacy of relationship with him that enables us to experience that rest for ourselves and to rule from rest ourselves, and to come out of a place of relationship that will enable us to bring rulership in a place of no fear, no anxiety, no worry, so we can truly bring righteousness and justice from a place where we are so close that we are speaking from his position, but also we're in intimate relationship with him. And I love that picture. It's just a sense of, because we have to come with childlike faith, and our faith must be childlike. Although we must be grown into maturity as adults, we still maintain that childlike faith of trust in him and intimacy with him and dependence on him in the right way, but recognizing that it's about rulership and kingship and authority and establishing kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. So that's really quite a lot about the lion and there are aspects of him that I'm sure that there's so much more that we're going to learn to experience in that, I'm sure. So yeah, is that okay? All right, okay.
That's about the eagle. Recently I had the eagle right in my face, but it was huge and it could have easily killed me. I mean, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But all I wanted to do was just touch it, feel its feathers, feel its skin, the warmth of him. But I'm not sure what it meant.
Okay. Well, I mean, the four faces of God is a real key understanding right now, because I think there's an alignment that God is calling from heaven with the sound of heaven, with the frequency, this vibration that's coming out of heaven, that's calling us back into alignment with the four faces of God, and that can take place in many different ways. But obviously around the ark, the high priest would come and he would sing or chant the names of God, and and we have that represented for us by the Yahweh or the Yod Hey Vav Hey, and that is a rhythm of life. And I think this is what God wants us to come back into, the rhythm of life where we are in covenant with him and connected up to heaven and eternity, and we go in and out and in and out of heaven in a rhythm. And when Adam was first made, God then breathed into him the breath of life. And the first thing that he did was to breathe out. You know, so if you think of the priestly function of the man, the face of God, the man, the face of God, the man, and our place in that and alignment with it is to look into heaven. Because the temptation for man is to look around on earth and to try and do things from a tree of the knowledge of good and evil, you know, our humanistic perspective. So the face of the man must always look into heaven, and the king function, or the yod, looks out from heaven. So the first step Adam did, he had to breathe out. So what he had received from heaven, he had to breathe out into the earth. And so the man looks into heaven and receives from heaven, and then the lion face, the king face, breathes out. So the man represents the priestly function, where we engage in the heavenly things, in the intimate things of God, and then the kingly function breathes that out. Then you have the ox and the prophetic, which looks again into heaven to engage the revelation of heaven. And then the apostolic, which is the eagle, then brings again out of heaven. So this is the rhythm of breath, in that we breathe out, we breathe in, we breathe out, we breathe in. And that actually is what happens within our natural body. You know, the heart pumps blood to the lungs, picks up the breath, brings it back to the heart, which pumps it around the body, which goes back to the heart, around for the lungs again. And there's this constant cycle where we're drawing breath. And in our natural life, we could have blood pumping around, but if there was no breath, then we would die. No oxygen, no life. And so there's this key that in understanding the four faces of God and understanding our alignment with him, that we are in him, that, you know, we are in Christ Jesus, that our lives are hidden with Christ in God. There's many scriptures that talked about being in him, that we're looking to align heaven and earth, and we're looking to bring what we receive in heaven and bring it and manifest it on earth. And that really is this cycle and rhythm of life. Now, obviously, when Adam fell, he was disconnected to heaven and therefore only operated on an earthly dimension. Jesus comes to open up heaven for us again. And so right through the Old Testament, you only had certain people being able to access the temple or the tabernacle or the holy place. You know, only the high priest could enter the Holy of Holies. Whereas now, Jesus has gone through the heavens, and he is our high priest, and he has opened up the veil for us to enter into heaven and to reestablish this connection of life. And so bringing heavenly life out of the alignment with God and who he is as the four faces, then enables us to bring that out. So the eagle represents the apostolic. And so the eagle soars into the heavens. The eagle has really sharp eyesight and powerful claws and talons. And you know, when I was engaged with my fast, and I first started to engage heaven, God spoke to me about the eagle and to look at it and see what the characteristics with the eagle was. And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I started to look, and you know, that they soar on thermals. They go high into them, but they've got amazing eyesight, and they can swoop down very quickly onto earth and engage things on the earth. So the apostolic brings things out of heaven, blueprints, revelatory understanding, government out of heaven, but it's manifested on earth, which is why it's coming out of heaven. So the eagle is a representation of apostolic ministry, and you know, God is revealing these things and calling people into these encounters, because there's a sense that there is so much more. When we begin to look from the eyes of the eagle, we will be able to see things from the perspective of heaven on the earth in sharp vision. And that is the role of the apostolic in that sense, is to bring those heavenly blueprints, but to see how the strategy is to be revealed on earth from heaven. So you have to be able to see, you know, and the eagle, in terms of speaking from that place, the eagle makes a cry. You know, there's a cry that the eagle makes in the noise that the eagle makes. The lion roars, you know, the ox sort of snorts and breathes out, and you know, but the eagle cries out, and there's a cry that comes out with the heart of God that's released through the apostolic to draw heaven into and earth into alignment, to bring people back into their destiny, that calls people to see things more clearly. And so that's really, you know, a very key thing right now, and a very key thing in alignment. And I can see that this sound is being released and calling things into alignment, because the eagle and the ox and the lion form a three, which is where the benches of three form, with those apostolic, prophetic, and kingly functions. But you need the priestly to bring agreement. And so the priestly must be looking into heaven to find agreement, so that agreement can bring heaven and earth together. And so that's a key function in these days that I believe God is releasing revelation, deeper revelation of, and there's so much more to come, but it's really great that you're experiencing some of those experiences right now, because I think it's part of the alignment of heaven and earth. So it's really good. Excellent. Okay. Okay. Anything else? No, no more questions? Oh, hang on.
Okay.
Yeah. No. Any...
Okay, no.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. We get scrolls either from the tree or from someone gives it to us, and then you said either we can eat it or read it or plant it. The outcome, whatever we do with it, isn't the outcome the same later, because it has to bear fruit in our everyday lives, or is the outcome different of those three?
It depends really on what the scrolls are, because there are scrolls which are associated with your destiny, your scroll, that's really your life. Psalm 139, those things that have been written about you before they were ever on earth, that's your scroll of destiny. That really is very much part of who you are, and so that's a one aspect of scrolls. There are also scrolls which are orders or court orders or mandates, if you like, for a particular purpose, and often those are the scrolls that I've found in the tree of life, that come off the tree of life, that I find sometimes I've found in the river of life. Sometimes in the river I've found scrolls that are representing things that I'm called to do, and depending on where you are, can depend on what you do with them. And I just go with what my spirit, what my sort of gut tells me, and normally I would take them within me, and I would embrace them at a spirit level, to embrace what it says, so I can have authority to outwork it. But there have been times where I've received a scroll in one of the courts, Court of Kings, received a scroll, I spoke it into being, and actually I needed to bring that scroll to have it authorized. So I read it, I saw what was on it, and at that point, it needed authorization. So I'd received it, but there was a process to go through before I could outwork it. So from that perspective, I needed to read it and therefore get authorization for it, and then present it again to the Court of Angels and different courts to have the scroll released. Because that scroll was something, it wasn't actually me, it was something that was part of authority that I was going to release or deliver or bring into being. And so I've read it in that sense. But I've also planted a scroll, and I've only done this once myself, but I received a scroll from the court I think it was the Court of Scribes or Angels, I can't remember, but it was a Court of Scribes, I think. So I was given this scroll, and I was about to eat it, and I was told, no, you need to plant it in your garden. And okay, so I went and planted it in the garden, and I watered it and did what I normally do when I plant things, water it and speak to it and command it to grow. And it grew into this amazing tree with golden, it didn't exactly have leaves, it was almost like it had golden strands hanging down from it, but within it there was these silver trumpets. And so rather than fruit, there was a silver trumpet, and I took the silver trumpet from the tree, and it was like, at that point I had no more revelation of the silver trumpet. So I thought, okay, well, I'll find out where's the silver trumpet mentioned in the word. So I looked and found it in Deuteronomy, and they blew the silver trumpet to make camp and to break camp, and so to call an assembly, to call people together, and to break that assembly, to release people out into strategy, if you like, where they were going. So for me, that was an encounter where I've used that trumpet over and over and over again, and I continually use that trumpet to blow and to herald things and to call forth new seasons and to release new things. And so whether it was just, I don't know, I needed to be shown that it was special, and this was actually something that was really part of me, rather than just, here's a scroll or here's something at the beginning. It was a special thing, and I've really sort of kept that as a special thing. So I think sometimes our experiences and our encounters become more meaningful sometimes when something's out of the ordinary, when something is different, rather than, okay, it's the same thing I've done before, I'll do this. And sometimes we can get familiar with things and lose the impact. And so I think God sometimes just does things differently, just to keep us stirred and keep us on our toes and say, oh, yeah, this is something, what's that? So that we'll be more intrigued. Because God wants us to search things out, and he wants us to embrace new things. So sometimes we have to search them out and find them. And so, I believe that, as we're finding establishment in the heavens, and we begin to rule in mountains, scrolls, mandates will become more and more important, because we'll go and we'll get a mandate for a particular purpose, and then we'll get that authorized, and then we'll get angels assigned to those mandates, and then we will then outwork them, potentially sometimes from our mountain thrones and then other things on earth. But they are going to become a key part of understanding the protocols of heaven, because that's how we get things authorized on those scrolls, and so different parts of it, how we do them, I think we just got to go with the flow of what our spirit is directing us to do, But and so I've done lots of different things, and I've had scrolls that I've then had to bring back here to earth to get ratification here, and then go stepping back into heaven with them once there's agreement. And there's such powerful things in agreement, and so bringing the three in alignment with the fourth always opens up a window or a doorway for blessing. So just operating in three isn't enough. We have to have the earthly agreement of the priestly function, and it's exactly the same when it comes to scrolls. We need agreement. Even though we can have something authorized in heaven, if there isn't earthly agreement, then we don't have the fullness of it manifested. We may have a triangle, which may bring authority as three, but you need four to open a door or a window. So finding that agreement is really key, and getting those four faces of God in harmony is really key, because it all has to have that heavenly agreement. And I think so much of the battles that have been going on over the past few years church-wise are over the pastoral only looking to the earthly problems without engaging heaven to find solutions, and there being this battle between the apostolic and the prophetic, and the apostolic and the pastoral, and the churches being maintenance rather than pioneers, and there's a lot of things there. There should be no problem in having the four faces of God working together and the four parts of ministry working together in agreement, in harmony, because that's how God is. He's in full agreement, in full harmony. There's a complete morphing of those four faces so that you don't necessarily see one still. Sometimes when we're focused in a thing, we get that sense of the lion or the eagle, but often it's just we've got to catch that aspect of God, and because it's always in unity, So yeah, that's some of the different things you can do with scrolls. I'm sure there'll probably be more we find to do, but that's some of the things I've learned to do with scrolls anyway. So, okay, all right. Anything else?
You just talked about earthly agreement. Do you mean that between the different offices there needs to happen forgiveness or reconciliation?
Yeah, I mean,
when you touch, there needs not only to be heavenly agreement but earthly agreement. So it's on the relational level, or is it something else too?
Well, with agreement, it has to function on all levels, and so heaven has to agree with earth has to agree with heaven, so that there is a unity and a blessing released from agreement, and the power that's multiplied in it. Power gets multiplied in agreement. So even when we come together corporately, we don't just get 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 when we come together. We get 1 multiplied to 10, to 100, to 1,000. One can put 1,000 to flight to 10,000. So there's a multiplication that happens in agreement. And the first thing we need is obviously to find out the will of God in heaven, and then once that's established in heaven, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. So everything must be established in heaven first. Then we are looking for earth to come into alignment and agreement with heaven. And if you think of the structure of government that God is bringing in, he's looking for a shadow or a pattern on earth that reflects that of heaven, then he can come and occupy it, and the angelic realms can come around it because they represent godly authority, and they see this looks like heaven on earth. So God is looking for churches and ministries and people who are called together to reflect heaven on earth and to establish agreement, harmony, honor amongst each other. And so once you've established it in heaven, you need to look for the earthly agreement, and that is where the priestly function comes in of the man, to look to heaven for agreement rather than looking to the earth. So much of it has been, that whole pastoral ministry has been earthly focused on the people. And there is a sense where it should be people focused, but you want people to receive the benefit of heaven, not worldly wisdom. You know, we need wisdom that's coming down from above. Now, in the past, we would have been able to say pray and seek for that wisdom, and God would have released it, and we would have got a measure of that from heaven. But God is calling us to come into maturity where we engage heaven ourselves and then bring that wisdom. And so it's an absolute key function that those four ministries come in complete agreement and harmony, that the rhythm of going in and out of heaven is the pattern that is established for us on earth. And so we're not looking to do things from a natural perspective without ever having engaged heaven first. There must be agreement. And that agreement then releases blessing, it releases the windows of heaven to be open, it brings heaven to earth, it brings what we would call outpourings of the Spirit, it brings revival, those type of things when there is an agreement between heaven and earth and heaven in that way. Now, obviously, we are on earth, so you have to outwork it in a practical way. You can't be, oh, we all agree in heaven, it's all wonderful, and we're all falling out on earth, and we don't get on, and we don't recognize each other, we don't honor each other. So having a culture of honor is absolutely key. Now, a culture of honor recognizes the necessity of apostolic foundations and apostolic blueprints, but it also recognizes the need for the prophetic to release that. It recognizes the need for the priestly to provide an environment of love, acceptance, affirmation on earth, and they all have to function together. So there's no competition, there's no looking for one to be better than the other or anything like that. It's not about looking for position, it's looking to operate in honor. So Jesus said, if you receive a prophet in the name of a prophet, you receive the reward of a prophet. So you have to honor the prophet in his ministry to receive the reward. The same with the apostolic, the same with the kingly function, and the same with the priestly function, and all of them must operate together in unity and harmony. They must be honoring of one another. The 7 redemptive gifts, again, different aspects of the character of God, all must be honored, all must be valued, so that we have all 7 functioning in our midst, that we are seeing everything from the full perspective that comes together when we get the big picture. And so if you only see a quarter of the picture, that's never going to see the complete fulfillment. If you see a 1/7 of it, so it's realizing that I see in part, therefore I need others to see in their part, and when I bring the full parts together, then that brings a whole, and that brings wholeness, it brings peace, it brings shalom. So it creates an environment where blessing is released. And that means we have to work at maintaining relationship. We must make sure nothing comes between us. We see the enemy's strategy is to bring enmity, strife, division. And the only reason that there's ever division is where we take two sides. If we come together to provide a solution, then there's no division. And you know, in English we have a word called a fence. An offence is what you put up to put on a boundary to separate one part from another. So on the edge of your property, you would have a fence that was there. You know, you could say a wall, or you could, you know, a barrier, whatever. But if you use the word fence, in the English language as well, you have two sides: an offence, that which is attacking, and a defense, that which is defending. And the only reason to have offense and defense is because someone has taken offense. Slightly different spelling, but it means that there is an offense, that someone has been wounded, offended, hurt by somebody else, and rather than seeking reconciliation, it's seeking harmony, seeking blessing by following biblical procedure. Hey, I've got a problem with someone, I'm offended, I go to them and I talk to them, and we find resolution that brings us back into harmony. Or I know someone's got a problem with me, I need to go to them as well if they're not coming to me, to make sure there are no fences, no division, no partitions, nothing between us that hinders relationship, that hinders a flow, because that creates parties, factions, enmity. And we have to really work hard at that, because our flesh takes offense really easily, and therefore by taking offense it causes us to have these barriers. The enemy loves it when there is offense around, because he can use that to cause division, and it gives him access to spoil things in our midst. And so making sure that we're open and honest with each other, that we're sharing our feelings with one another, bringing things into the light, bringing things into the openness. Yeah, it says in John, in I think 1 John, you know, if we walk in the light as he is in the light, then we can have fellowship with one another, and then the blood of Jesus can cleanse us from all sin. But if we don't walk in the light, then we can't have fellowship, and actually then we're not going to be receiving forgiveness and cleansing, because we're in darkness. So it's an absolute key function, this culture of honor, and really pursuing openness, which is me saying, I'm willing for you to speak into my life. I'm willing for you to speak and tell me if there's anything that you feel, that you see. I'm open. And I'm also honest. I am willing to speak honestly into someone else's life. So when I feel offended, I'm going to be honest and say, I feel something. I'm not going to point the finger and accuse. I'm going to say, I feel this. And then that gives someone an opportunity of responding without being accused. Because if we're accusing each other, who is the accuser? The devil. He's the accuser of the brethren. So if we go around accusing each other, we're doing his work. And we don't want to be doing his work. So we've got to be so careful to operate in openness and honesty, in love, to create an environment where we honor and respect each other, value the different viewpoints, rather than being threatened by them. You know, because someone has a different viewpoint, why should I be threatened? Only if I'm insecure about my own viewpoint, or that I'm trying to force my viewpoint onto everybody else. So I'm looking for my viewpoint and the way I see things from my redemptive gift and my ministry gifts to bring to the whole, and so that I need others to impart their parts to it. Then we have the full picture of shalom, peace, harmony, and we know God commands a blessing where there is unity. So it has to be in earth and heaven, and it also needs to be on earth in our midst, so that we can have access to heaven. You know, we won't get access to heaven if we're not walking in the light fully, you know. And so it's a really key thing, the whole culture of honor and making sure that we're operating in that level of honesty and openness. And it's not easy. You know, we're working through this at the moment. We spent 9 months looking to create an environment of honesty and openness, and sometimes people find it really hard to share because of the things maybe in the past and memories or whatever it might be. They find it hard to be honest and to share and to be open about how they're feeling. You know, and some people have shared their things in the past and they've been crushed and damaged and they feel more sensitive. We have to create an environment of love where we can be real and we don't have to wear masks, but we really fight for harmony and unity. We really make sure that we allow nothing of the enemy to cause strife and enmity between us. You know, because it will just stop us fulfilling God's purpose if we allow that. We won't be able to have a manifestation that will come in a place of wholeness because of the access the enemy gets through that. So, you know, I think agreement has to take place everywhere, you know, and we need to work really hard at it. You know. Okay. Any other questions? Any other things? No? Okay. Well, let's finish off with an activation, and let's look to engage with God. Do you remember the last activation we did, where we went on that one? I think we went into the Garden of God and did some things around there. So I think it would be good to look to engage again in around the four faces of God around the ark, because it seems that that's where you've been experiencing things. So it'd be great to just come around the presence of God in the Holy of Holies and look to engage with the four faces of God, and just again look to engage and see what God does there. I think that would be a good place to finish off today in engagement, and let's see where that might take us. Okay, so just encourage you again just to close your eyes, just begin to picture Jesus, to think about him, fix our eyes on him. Just remember that he has gone into heaven before us to create a way for us to follow him, that he has opened heaven and we can walk up the steps in through the open door that is through his flesh available and open to us. So let's just step through that doorway. Jesus is waiting there to welcome us. He wants to take us by the hand, and he's going to take us through the cross and through the dimension of the kingdom where the laver is, that mirror of the word, that we can look into his word, look into who we are and see reflected back how he sees us, what the word says about us. And I would just encourage you just to look into the mirror of the living word and just see what's reflected back, the image that's revealed there of who you are as a child of God, as one with calling and destiny. Just see what's reflected back to you as we look into that laver, that bronze laver with mirror surface. Jesus again just takes us further, brings us through the realm of his presence, just brings us through the different realms of the kingdom of God to come around the ark of his presence, through the veil of the life, where the reflection of the light of his presence begins to manifest. And as we align ourselves with the four faces of God, the Yod and the He, and the Vav and the He, the Yod and He, and Vav and He, Yod, He, Vav, He, Yod, He, Vav, He, the lion, the ox, the eagle, and the man, the lion, the ox, the eagle, and the man. Just sense and be drawn into alignment. The increase in the light of his presence, the reflection of his glory. And I can see stones, jewels, that he wants to release to you today. As in the book of Revelation, there's a new stone that has a new name, a name of alignment with heaven that he wants to release to you today. And just receive that stone from him. It's part of the breastplate of righteousness that you have this stone set in your breastplate to reflect the color I can see for Valtrout it's a blue stone reflecting a deep blue color. For Regina, I can see yellow stone, which is yellow. And Marjan, I can see a stone which is red. Just receive those stones. Let the reflection and the vibrating frequency of those stones begin to draw you into resonance with him and with alignment with him. And just let the revelation of that touch your spirit. Jesus would take us by the hand and lead us through another doorway into the record room, and he will draw you to a scroll that resonates with the colors and the stones that you've been given. Just let him draw you. Just sense as he reveals something of that scroll to you. Just begin to sense and feel it vibrate. Feel the light absorbed into that stone and released from that stone as you begin to fulfill and outwork your identity and who you really are. Right through this engagement, I sense that Jesus has been showing you something deeper about how he sees you, how he feels about you, what he's written about you. He's drawing you deeper into alignment with that. That this scroll and the stones are part of that process. Now he places the scroll into your hand and he takes you through another doorway and he's taking you into the court of angels. And you come and stand with him in the presence of the multitudes of angels to present that scroll, to release the color that will draw the angels to you, to your mission, to your assignment, to your identity. The legions of angels are being assigned as you present your scroll. There's a sense of joy and exultation amongst the angelic host to be involved with your life, with your destiny. There's an excitement. As they gather around your scroll. Now he would have us take the doorway back through to the garden of our own heart, and again to begin to take that experience, the deep things in our spirit, and loose them within our heart, to be free within our garden, to release the creativity, to take what we resonate with from that experience and plant it beside the river of life, to water it, to command growth, to see fruitfulness at work, and just begin to take the fruit of our experiences to our secret place, our place of intimacy with him, and just begin to share with him those things that are on your heart. that have been stirred. Some things you may not understand. Begin to ask him for wisdom, for clarification, for revelation within your secret place. Now we can just step back into this realm, carrying with us that record within our hearts. Okay. Well, feel free to share anything that you'd like to of any of that if you want. And if you feel don't feel pressured to, if you'd like to share, feel free to share. If not, that's fine. You know, but take these encounters and just go back over them. Go to that secret place in your own heart and draw deeper revelation from them. You know, they're just activations to engage, but then you get the full revelation as you go for yourself and take possession of those things yourself and go back to God with them yourself. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if there's
Thanks a lot.
if there's anything else, yeah.
Just a short question towards the pictures of the lions you showed us. Is it possible to get them?
I just found them either posted on Facebook in the Facebook groups or
Okay.
around. So or Google Lion of Judah, and you find all sorts of
Okay.
on the helpful. Just a picture, you know, engagement. So, yeah.
Mm.